Thank you very much, Glenn. That was a very nice introduction. I don't feel that young. I threw out my neck a couple days ago, so I'm like, I'm doing this thing. But anyway, I appreciate you inviting me to be here today. It's an honor to be with my friends at Crossroads and all the advocates and people that are working so hard for the community. As I was thinking about what exactly to say today, I was doing research and looking at all of the updated statistics for the state of Utah, and there's a lot of things to focus on. One that came to me really quickly was this number of around 100,000 adults and children in our state that are suffering or dealing with intergenerational poverty at some level. And I thought, we could focus on all the statistics, but we're here today, all of us, because we already know the sobering reality of our community. We know these clients, we work with them, and these community members that are in need are people that we're working already tirelessly to support, and we're all doing what we can to address the inequities and the social injustices in our community. And as I was thinking about this reality, I started to think about my own situation, my own responsibility to address these issues. As a person who operates in the political side of the solution, it's not lost on me that the corner of the community that I represent has much of the heavy lifting to do here. It is at the governmental level that we need people to really step up. We need our state leaders to meet the advocates where they're at, to meet with the service providers, and to use public policy as the tool that it's supposed to be used for, which is to really improve and protect the quality of life for all of the residents in our community. And so again, we look to our state and local leaders to do the right thing here. I realize that all political leaders really are just humans. They have their own history and their own worldview, and oftentimes, especially here at the state legislature, they operate in their own bubble. And so many are unaware of the reality of the jobs that we're doing, right? Of the effort that you're undertaking and the priorities that you have in your professional lives. And so we've got to put the pressure on our leaders. It's my job, it's your job, it's our job to really build that pressure around certain leaders in our community so that they understand what we're dealing with here. And are able to not only see the suffering and the gaps, but are equipped with the tools to go out there and make meaningful public policy decisions that lead to action and long-term change. I know that it's my own lived experience, for instance, that gives me a somewhat different perspective than many of my peers on the Hill. So if I may tell just a quick personal story. When I was a kid, about 10 years old, my whole world was flipped upside down when my parents went through a divorce, which is not a really uncommon story for a lot of kids. But what also wasn't uncommon for me in that situation was the instability and the disruption and the emotional trauma that came from experiencing a really rocky separation as a child. And that also is very unfortunate for far too many young people in our community. My siblings and I were living with my mother, who had never really worked before. She was a stay-at-home mom for the majority of my childhood. And after this separation, she picked up odd jobs here and there, ultimately working long days and long nights as a day laborer, a cleaner for our neighbors, and a beautician for her friends. It was all that she could cobble together to make ends meet. But I looked back and realized how important it was for the stability of my family to have somebody like my mother jump into single motherhood feet first, just to survive. It was around this time that my younger brother, 4 years younger than me, he was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. This is a diagnosis that's scary for anybody, any child in particular. And it brought on a long period of financial and emotional chaos for my recently fractured family. The whole situation and the troubles themselves were compounded shortly thereafter when my father ran into big trouble with the law and ended up going to prison for 8 years. This was especially challenging for my mother, the single mom. She stopped receiving child support, and at the time we lost our health insurance. This threw an additional $2,000 to $5,000 a month of expenses onto my mom for the gap insurance coverage, for the hospital fees, for the night stays, the cancer treatments, the medication, etc. My mom was sinking, and we were slipping really fast into a dire situation. So we moved in with my mom's friend. We doubled up. We had a shared living situation. My brothers and I, we bounced around from school to school, oftentimes missing weeks at a time due to chemotherapy treatments, lack of childcare for my youngest sibling, and just general instability. I tell you this story not for pity or anything, but just to give you an example of one of those lived experiences that I have under my belt that informs the way I make decisions in public policy, and how this experience has given me some understanding about the impacts of poverty, even just for a short period of time in my experience. Anybody can fall into situations that are uncomfortable, and many people oftentimes fall into poverty and aren't able to find a way to lift themselves out of it. And so that's why we're here today. We're here today to make a difference, to learn from each other, and to move the conversation along, not for the sake of the conversation itself necessarily, but to make meaningful connections among each other that allow us to move the needle in our community. Our goal here is to truly eradicate poverty, and it's definitely something that we can do with enough resources and commitment, right? So, that being the goal, I look around and I am worried because what I see in our community are red flags everywhere. Yes, the city, the county, and the state have really focused on homelessness, and I feel good about some of the efforts we've made over the last couple of years, but I still see far too many people living on the rough in our streets. I feel really good about the effort that we've made to realign the homeless services system to better care for our clients, to provide individuals with individualized care, and to get people reintegrated, but I still count too few shelter beds, especially when the new shelters open, and I'm worried about winter. I think that there's a real meaningful effort underway right now to address the opioid epidemic, to take it seriously. There's some conversations about holding providers and the drug manufacturers accountable, but I still have too many meetings with suffering moms dealing with their children who are struggling with opioid addiction. Families' lives have been torn apart, and it continues to happen under our nose to this day. And so we've got to step it up when it comes to opioids. I look around and I see nearly every community along the Wasatch Front growing. In many ways, we are a victim of our own success. This long-standing effort that the state of Utah has put on economic development is generally a good thing, but look at what it's doing. We have rising rents. Residents are being priced out of their neighborhoods where they've lived for their whole lives. I see seniors and folks in their golden years unable to pay the $1,300 or $1,400 or $1,500 a month for a single-room apartment in downtown Salt Lake City. We are seeing the cost of living skyrocket in our community, and that itself makes escaping poverty that much more difficult, especially for people who are living on the edge day to day. And then I look around at our global community, and I see the key political challenge of our time exacerbating the problem of poverty. Climate change is taking root, and people who are living in poverty are just simply more vulnerable to the effects and the impacts of a shifting climate. These things are already starting to take root when it comes to, the cost of food. It's driving up the cost of food production, transportation, insurance, you name it, is being impacted by climate change. And this itself, over the next couple of decades, is going to continue to weigh on all of our efforts, so we need to be very mindful of that. Here in Utah, I see a good chunk of our policymakers neglecting the will of the voters when they pass full Medicaid expansion that will provide life-changing health care to the most needy among us. I see the legislature themselves rewriting a medical cannabis law that voters passed once again, making it harder for individuals to access the non-lethal pain management that's an alternative to opioids. This is a problem. I opened up the Tribune a few weeks ago and I learned that the state's best tool for affordable housing, the Ole and Walker Housing Trust Fund, is drying up. It's almost completely out of cash. And this last year, we had a housing bill that was stripped of all of its funding. What I'm seeing is big red flags at the state level. We are flattening our spending on housing. We aren't keeping up with the cost of inflation, the cost of land, the cost of labor, the cost of construction. We're falling behind as a state. One of the most frustrating things for me right now is I'm hearing our state leaders, they are talking about the need for tax reform. They talk about it, how structural tax reform is a big deal right now. You better believe that in almost every conversation I have with the Republican supermajority, they are talking about putting the tax back on food. This is a problem. This is unacceptable. And even with the tax credit that they are presenting as an alternative here, most people that this will impact can't wait until April for their tax return when they're trying to buy groceries every week, right? These issues are impacting the day-to-day of people who are at the very lower and at the lowest end of our socioeconomic spectrum, and we've got to advocate, we've got to organize, and we've got to do better. We need to continue to remind our political leaders about what really matters in their role as policymakers. We need to continue to drive better collaboration between the city, the county, the state, and the federal government. We need deeper collaboration and coordination among the nonprofit service providers, our advocates, and of course the private sector has a role to play here as well. We need individuals like all of you here and others to stay loud, to stay vigilant, and to organize and to vote. And so we must continue to rally and to stay focused and not to forget our goal, which is to eradicate poverty. And the way that I see that we do this right now is we begin by investing in people themselves. We need a massive community bond for affordable housing. This has been floated over the last couple of years of the legislature. It never gets anywhere, but we need cash for affordable housing. We need more subsidies. We need more development of permanent supportive housing. We just simply need more. We have a vacancy rate hovering around 3 or 4%, and it's not getting any better. We're growing so fast. We invest in people by providing them with the health care that they need by fully expanding Medicaid. This is an investment that only makes sense, only makes financial sense in the long run. We do all of this work by looking for funding streams that will allow us to provide affordable child care for working families. Right now, a lot of child care services cost more than most people's mortgages. That's unacceptable, especially if we consider ourselves a family-friendly state. And speaking of family-friendly, we do this work by investing in our public schools, by paying our teachers a fair, livable wage, by funding after-school programs. And like I mentioned a moment ago, we need to really hold our political leaders' feet to the fire when they say that they're a family-friendly, that they advocate for family-friendly policies. If we truly want to be a family-friendly state, we would provide early childhood education and universal pre-K to all kids in our state. It's not only the right thing to do, but it's one of the best investments we can make in our collective future. So, with all that being said, I want to thank you once again for having me here today on this early Saturday morning. It's my honor to come and support Crossroads and all of the work that you're doing for the neediest in our community. I want you to see me as an advocate, an ally, and somebody who's hungry for good policy. I need you to feed that to me, so let's set up some meetings, and I hope that over the next couple of years we can really move the needle in this community. So I just want to thank you for having me today.